This is an emergency broadcast. If you can hear this, stay on this frequency. Do not change the dial. Do not turn off your radio. Something is happening. Something unexplainable. No official reports, no warning signs, just silence where there should be noise, and fear where there should be answers. I don't know how long this signal will hold. I don't even know who else is still out there. But I need you to listen carefully. Because if I stop talking, if this transmission cuts out, then maybe I wasn't supposed to be speaking at all. People are calling in. They don't know what's happening either. Their voices sound shaken, uncertain. But the one thing they all agree on is this. Something is terribly, terribly wrong, and no one in power seems willing to explain what it is. There's no explosion, no smoke rising from the city, no sirens wailing in the distance, but the fear is there, creeping in, settling deep in the bones. People are disappearing. Cities are shutting down. The news channels have stopped broadcasting anything useful, sticking to vague reassurances. Stay calm. Remain indoors. Await further instructions. Instructions for what? For something they won't even name? I've been doing this for years, and I've covered some of the worst nights people could imagine. But this is different. It's not war. It's not a storm. It's not even an attack. It's an absence. Avoid swallowing the world one quiet street at a time. And if you think you're safe just because you haven't seen it yet, think again, because I don't think this is something you can see. The reports are coming in from everywhere now. Major cities, small towns, isolated homes in the middle of nowhere. The details vary, but the message is the same. People are walking outside to find the streets abandoned, cars left running, lights still on in empty buildings. In some places, clocks have stopped. At different times, no pattern, just stopped. One caller from Chicago swore he saw a traffic jam at an intersection, but every single driver was gone. Their doors wide open, their phones still sitting in their laps with unfinished messages on the screen. Another from Seattle said the entire waterfront was eerily still, no boats, no movement, just the quiet lapping of the waves against the shore. Whatever this is, it isn't just one place. It isn't just one moment. It's everywhere, and it's spreading. I just took a call from someone who sounded lost, not scared, not panicked, just confused. She said she was on the phone with her husband when his voice cut out mid-sentence. Not static, not a dropped call, just gone. Another listener said they walked into a cafe where people had been just minutes before. The drinks were still warm, chairs slightly pulled out. But the place was empty. No signs of struggle, no bodies, no footprints leading away. And then there's the strangest report yet. Someone swears they heard the voice of a missing friend through the radio static, not calling for help, not screaming, just whispering, saying their name. I don't know what's worse, not knowing where these people have gone, or the possibility that maybe they're still here. A caller from Texas just told me something that sent a chill through my spine. He said he heard a sound last night. Not music, not voices, not static. Something else. It was low at first, like a distant hum, but it kept getting louder until it was inside his head. A pressure, a frequency so unnatural it made him sick to his stomach. He blacked out. When he woke up, hours had passed, and the streets outside were empty. No one else around him heard it. Not his wife, not his neighbors, just him. And now I can't shake the feeling that something is buried in this signal, something beneath the static, beneath my own voice. Maybe it's always been there, waiting for the right moment to be heard. I've tried to reach emergency services, government hotlines, even old contacts in the news industry. Nothing. Either the lines are dead or they won't pick up. There's no official announcement, no press conference, no national address. The only thing that's playing on repeat is the same lifeless automated message. Stay calm. Remain indoors. Await further instructions. That's not reassurance. That's avoidance. Someone out there knows what this is. They know why the streets are empty. why people are disappearing without a trace, and they're not telling us. But here's what I do know. Silence is worse than lies, because silence means they're afraid too. And if the people in charge are afraid, then God help the rest of us. An official statement has just been released, but I'll be honest with you. It tells us nothing. No answers, no explanations, just a few sterile sentences delivered in that cold, detached way government warnings always sound. Remain indoors. Avoid unnecessary travel. Refrain from speculation. Await further instructions. That's it. That's all they've given us. Not even a confirmation that something is happening. Just a suggestion that we all sit tight and stop asking questions. No press conferences. No emergency briefings. Just this empty directive, repeated in loops across every official channel. What are they so afraid of saying? People aren't stupid. They know when something isn't right. The news stations are cutting away from live feeds. Radio hosts, ones I've known for years, are suddenly off the air. And now I'm getting reports that emergency services are overwhelmed. I don't think they don't have answers. I think they do. And I think they're staying quiet because the truth is worse than the silence. Stay on this frequency. If they won't tell us what's happening, then we'll figure it out ourselves. A woman from New York just called in. She took the subway home from work, like she always does. Same route, same train, same crowded station. But when she stepped off at her stop, something felt wrong. The platform was deserted. No workers, no passengers, just empty space where people should have been. At first, she thought maybe there was an emergency announcement she'd missed, maybe an evacuation order. But when she looked around, she noticed something chilling. Belongings scattered everywhere. Briefcases, purses, half-eaten sandwiches, a child's backpack, unzipped, with schoolbooks spilling onto the floor. It was as if everyone had been there just seconds before, but they weren't anymore. No signs of struggle, no bodies, just the echoes of a place that should have been full. She ran up to the street level, expecting to find answers. Instead, she found an entire intersection frozen in time, cars still running, doors flung open, traffic lights cycling through colors for no one. She's locked herself in her apartment now, listening to this broadcast, waiting for someone, anyone, to tell her what's going on. A man from Chicago called in next. His voice was shaking. He wasn't afraid when he dialed the number. He was terrified. He was out walking his dog when he saw something that made his stomach drop. A man was crossing the street ahead of him. Mid-step, mid-stride, mid-motion, he disappeared. No warning, no sound. 1 second, he was there, the next he wasn't. At first, the caller thought his eyes were playing tricks on him. Maybe the guy had turned a corner. Maybe he'd stepped into a shadow. But then he saw it again. Another person gone. Then another. It was as if the world had simply erased them. No screams, no flashes of light. Just empty space where people had been. He ran home, slammed the door behind him, and checked the news. Nothing. No alerts, no explanations. Just the same vague warnings from officials telling people to stay inside and not to panic. But how can you not panic when people are vanishing right in front of you? How do you convince yourself it's all in your head when you can still see their footprints in the snow? We need answers, but right now all we have is fear. A caller from Texas just shared something I can't shake. He said he heard a sound last night. Not voices, not static, something else. It started as a low hum, barely noticeable, like the vibration of an old refrigerator, but it got louder and deeper. He said it wasn't just something he heard, it was something he felt, crawling through his bones, pressing against his skull. At first he thought it was a power surge, maybe something wrong with the electrical grid, but then his vision blurred. His body froze in place. He tried to move, to reach for his phone, but he couldn't. And then, blackness. When he woke up, hours had passed. His nose was bleeding. His ears were ringing. And outside, the world had changed. The streets were empty, cars left running, doors wide open. His neighbor's dog, one he heard barking every night, was lying still on the front porch, eyes open, unmoving. He swears the sound is still there, just beneath the surface of the silence, waiting for someone else to hear it. And now, as I sit here speaking to all of you, I can't help but wonder, is it buried in this signal too? I've reached out to scientists, emergency responders, anyone who might have an explanation. But the problem isn't just that no one knows. It's that they all have different answers. Some say it's mass hysteria, that fear itself is contagious, making people believe something impossible is happening. They claim the mind fills in the blanks when faced with the unknown. But that doesn't explain the abandoned cities, the stalled clocks, the bodies that aren't where they should be. Others think it's a biological attack, something airborne, something we don't have the science to detect yet. But there's no pattern, no symptoms, no warnings, just absence. And then there are the ones who won't speak on record, the ones who hesitate just a little too long before saying they have no comment. One physicist I spoke with suggested something I can't even wrap my head around. He said, what if it's not people disappearing? What if it's reality breaking apart? And then he hung up. I don't know what's happening, but I do know this. If the experts don't have answers, then maybe we've already gone too far beyond them. Every report contradicts the last. Some say people are vanishing. Some say they're still here, but changed. A few even claim time itself is breaking, that clocks are losing minutes, that the same songs keep playing on loop as if the world is trying to correct itself. I spoke with a man from Montana who insists he saw his own house disappear. He was standing in his front yard, drinking his morning coffee, when his home, his wife, his kids, everything, simply blinked out of existence. The road was still there, the mailbox, the garden hose, but the house, gone. Meanwhile, a woman from Pennsylvania says her sister came home last night. The sister who had been missing for 2 weeks. She walked in, sat at the kitchen table like nothing had happened, confused as to why anyone was upset. She had no memory of ever being gone. There's no logic to this. No timeline to follow. Just fear. And the worst part? The longer I stay on this broadcast, the more I wonder, am I still here? Or am I just another voice in the static? I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. The calls keep coming, each one stranger than the last. I've spent years reporting on disasters, wars, and everything in between. But this isn't like anything I've covered before. At first I thought it was panic, mass hysteria feeding on itself. But the more I hear, the more I start to wonder, what if we aren't overreacting? What if we're underestimating this? I keep going back to the reports. People disappearing without a trace. Cities empty, yet untouched. The sound no one should be able to hear. And the worst part? The contradictions. Some swear time is skipping, others say it's slowing down. Some claim to be the only one left in their town, but others see figures. Things that shouldn't be there, shouldn't be moving. The government still isn't saying anything. No briefings, no press conferences, just silence. And the silence is starting to feel deliberate. If anyone out there has answers, I need you to call in, because I don't know how much longer I can keep making sense of this. And if I'm being honest, I don't know if I trust my own thoughts anymore. A caller from St. Louis just shared something that shook me. He works night shifts at a hospital, a trauma center, busy every single hour. But tonight, it was different. He stepped out for a break, just for a minute. When he went back in, the entire place was empty. No doctors, no nurses, no patients. IVs still dripping, heart monitors still beeping, surgical tools still laid out in the operating rooms. but no people. He ran through the halls, calling out names, checking every room. Nothing. No signs of a rush, no unfinished paperwork, no spilled coffee in the break room, just silence. The scariest part? The doors were still locked from the inside. He was the only one left. He searched for security footage, anything to prove he hadn't lost his mind, but when he pulled up the camera feeds, all he saw was static, except for one frame, a single frozen image, the emergency room, filled with people. But they weren't moving. They weren't doing anything at all, just standing there, staring directly at the camera. And then, black screen. He left the hospital. He didn't look back. I've been trying to map out the reports to see if there's a pattern, but it's happening everywhere. A man from Denver says the entire downtown area is abandoned. The billboards are still flashing, the streetlights cycling, but no cars, no voices, no movement. He walked for blocks and didn't see a single soul. A woman in Atlanta says she saw something different. The streets were empty, yes, but she wasn't alone. She couldn't explain it. Not exactly. She said there were figures in the distance, but every time she tried to focus on them, they were gone. Not like they ran away. Like they were never there to begin with. She tested it. She walked down an empty street, saw a shadow move between two buildings, and took a picture. But when she checked her phone, there was nothing there. No shadow, no blur, no sign that anything had been there at all. And now she's questioning everything. What she's seen. What she hasn't. If she's still seeing the world as it is, or as it's being rewritten. And that's the part that scares me most. Because what if she's right? The government won't speak, but the military is moving. Convoys rolling through highways in the dead of night, headlights off, no sirens, no announcements. Just a slow, methodical march towards something none of us understand. A listener from Colorado said he counted 15 armored trucks passing through his town. No markings, no insignia, just matte black metal and tinted windows. He tried to flag one down, to ask what was happening. No one stopped. No one even looked at him. Another caller, a trucker from Louisiana, claims he followed a convoy for nearly an hour. They didn't stop at checkpoints, didn't refuel, just an endless, deliberate movement toward nothing. Then, without warning, the vehicles vanished. No exits, no turnoffs. Just an empty stretch of road where they had been seconds before. And then there's this. Someone monitoring military channels reported strange transmissions. No clear orders. Just one repeated phrase. Maintain silence. Keep moving. They know something. They've known from the beginning. But whatever this is, whatever they're responding to, they aren't fighting it. They're fleeing. I don't want to fuel conspiracy theories, but at this point, what else is there? We have no official reports, no scientific explanation, just scattered voices trying to make sense of something that refuses to be understood. Some say reality itself is breaking apart, that the disappearances aren't people being taken, but the world editing them out. The streets are the same, the buildings still stand, but they feel wrong, like stage sets built for actors who never arrived. Others believe we're being watched. Not by the government, not by satellites or drones, but by something else. Something that has been here all along, just out of sight. I got an email from someone claiming they saw it. Not in the sky, not on the ground, but in the spaces between things, the corners of rooms, the edges of their vision. It doesn't move. It just observes. And the moment they tried to focus on it, it was gone. Maybe this isn't an attack. Maybe this is a correction. And if that's true, I have to ask, what happens to the ones who notice? Someone or something just hijacked this signal. It came through all at once. A burst of static so sharp it felt alive, like it was digging into the frequency, forcing itself through. And then, layered beneath the distortion, a voice, not a person, not a recording, something else, It spoke in a whisper, but it felt louder than anything I've ever heard. It said, "It's watching us, and we're watching it." I don't know what it means. I don't know who was speaking. But they weren't alone. There were other voices beneath it, speaking in unison, overlapping, like a choir out of sync. The longer I listened, the more I felt like I could almost understand them. But the words weren't in any language I know. And then, just as quickly as it started, it stopped. No static, no distortion, just silence. Like the whole world was holding its breath. I need to ask, are you still there? I need to know that someone, somewhere, is hearing this. Because right now, I don't trust my own voice. The reports keep coming. The missing, the moving shadows, the figures that don't exist until you notice them. People who swear they haven't vanished, but have never been real to begin with. And the worst part, I don't know if I believe them or if I'm becoming one of them. I keep thinking about that transmission. It's watching us and we're watching it. What does that mean? Who is it? And if we're watching it too, what happens when it decides to look back? I don't know how much longer I can do this. I thought I could stay objective, hold myself together. But the weight of this, of all of it, is pressing down on me. I keep checking the station clock, but the time never feels right. Minutes stretch too long, or disappear completely. I'll look away for what feels like seconds, and suddenly, half an hour is gone. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe I've been talking for hours and the clock is the only thing keeping up. The phone lines are still open, but every voice that comes through is shaking. Fear is contagious. I can feel it slipping into my own words, turning my voice into something frantic, something uncertain. I tell myself to stay rational, to focus on the reports, but the stories are starting to blur together. Disappearances, distortions, patterns that shouldn't exist. And then there's the silence between calls, the unbearable stillness when no one is speaking. It's like the world itself is holding its breath, waiting. I don't know what's worse, the things I'm hearing or the things I'm starting to imagine in the quiet moments between them. It was only a matter of time before people started turning on each other. Fear does that. It warps the mind, makes you see enemies in the people you once trusted. A woman from Michigan says her neighbors showed up at her door in the middle of the night, begging to be let inside. He kept saying he wasn't like the others, that he was still real. She didn't understand what he meant until he started sobbing. He said his wife wasn't his wife anymore, that she looked the same, spoke the same, but something in her eyes was wrong. Empty, like she was going through the motions of being human, but wasn't quite getting it right. Another caller said their entire apartment complex has gone silent. People are still there, but no one is speaking. No one is blinking, just watching. Then there's the man from Arizona who called in, whispering. He said the people in his town have started asking questions. Strange, meaningless questions. What year is it? Do you remember your name? He told me he wasn't sure if they were testing him or themselves. A trucker from Nebraska just called in. He hasn't stopped driving since this started. Too afraid to pull over. But he saw something that made him press the brakes. A stretch of highway, perfectly lined with abandoned cars. Hundreds of them, all parked with eerie precision. No crashes, no chaos. Just vehicles positioned in neat, identical rows, stretching for miles. He got out, walked between them, checked inside. Every car was empty. Some still had fresh coffee in the cup holders. Radios on, playing the same song on loop. It was like the drivers had all stepped out at the exact same moment, for a reason he couldn't begin to understand, And then he noticed something worse. The road ahead of him was clear, but the one behind him, the road he had just driven, was now lined with cars too. Identical rows, as if they had always been there. He didn't stop again. And now I'm wondering how many other highways are out there, quietly filling with vehicles that no one remembers leaving behind. A woman from Ohio called in, her voice barely above a whisper. She's always had a routine. Wake up, brush her teeth, look in the mirror. Nothing unusual until last night. She swears it happened in an instant. She turned her head to grab a towel, and when she looked back, her reflection hadn't moved. She froze, waiting for it to catch up, but it didn't. It just stood there, staring. And then, slowly, it smiled. She swears she didn't. She was too terrified to move, to breathe, but the reflection smiled anyway. She ran, didn't look back, didn't sleep, and now she's afraid to go near any mirror in her house, because when she does, she feels it, watching. Not a copy, not a trick of the light, something else. Something that knows she's afraid. She covered every mirror, smashed the one in her bathroom, but now she says she catches glimpses of something shiny in the corners of her vision, like glass, like a reflection even where there shouldn't be one. She asked me if I've checked my own reflection tonight, if I've noticed anything off. And now I can't stop staring at the dark window in front of me, waiting for my own face to blink first. I don't know if I should say this. Maybe I'm just tired. Maybe my mind is playing tricks on me. But I swear, I just heard something. I'm alone in the studio. I have been all night. But a few minutes ago, while I was reading the last report, I heard footsteps. Faint, distant, like someone moving in the hallway. I told myself it was nothing, just my nerves. But then I heard it again, closer. And then the whispers started. Not full words, just fragments of sound, like a conversation happening just out of reach. I checked the door, it's locked. The security cameras show nothing. But I felt it. Something was here. I don't know what's worse, the fact that it stopped or the fact that I'm still waiting for it to start again. I keep telling myself I'm imagining things. That's what fear does, right? It turns shadows into monsters, creaks into voices. But I know what I heard. And now I don't know if I want to keep talking or if I need to stop and listen. More reports are coming in and they're all the same. People losing time. Waking up in places they don't remember going. Hours missing. Days rewriting themselves. A man from Oregon says he drove home from work, parked in his driveway, got out of his car, only to realize it was morning again, the same day, the same commute, as if the night had never happened. He checked his phone, the same texts, the same timestamp. Reality had reset, but only for him. A woman from Florida swears she's lived through this week twice. Same conversation, same meals. A loop she can't break. But then there's the man from Nevada. He says he fell asleep on his couch, and when he woke up, he was standing outside in the rain, holding a set of keys that weren't his. His phone was missing, his wallet gone, and when he checked his reflection in a store window for one horrible second, it wasn't his face staring back. What's happening to us? Are we forgetting, or is something rewriting us? And if it is, what happens when it decides to start over completely? I keep talking, keep reading reports, keep telling myself this is still a broadcast. But what if it isn't? What if I've been sitting here speaking into an empty station, into a microphone that hasn't been transmitting for hours? What if this is all just for nothing? The calls have slowed down. Maybe the signal is breaking up. Maybe people have stopped listening. Or maybe there's no one left to listen. A few minutes ago, the radio crackled. Just for a second, a sound layered beneath my own voice. It was me, but not my voice, saying the same words I just spoke, but a fraction of a second late, like an echo. But I never played a recording. There's no delay. So who or what was speaking with me? If you're out there, if you can hear this, tell me I'm not alone. Because I'm starting to feel like I am. Something just landed in my inbox. A document. No sender, no subject line. Just a file titled Incident Report, redacted. At first I thought it was a hoax. But the more I read, the more my stomach twisted. It wasn't about this crisis. It was about another. One that was never supposed to be remembered. The report details an event eerily similar to what's happening now. Mass disappearances, lost time, distorted perceptions of reality. It references entire towns that vanished overnight. Their existence scrubbed from maps, from records, from memory itself. And then there's the most unsettling part. The date. It wasn't last year or a decade ago. The incident was reported in 1897 and again in 1953, then 1981. Different places, different generations, but the same phenomenon repeating like a pattern. Someone has been tracking this for over a century. Every time, the same symptoms. The same silence from those in power. And every time, it was erased like it never happened at all. I don't know who sent this. I don't know if I should even be reading it. But if this isn't the first time, how does it end? I've spent the last few minutes reading through the excerpts, trying to make sense of them. The language is clinical, detached. Whoever wrote this was trying to remove any emotion, any weight. But the truth is still there, buried in the lines they didn't redact. One section describes a town that no longer exists, not abandoned, erased. Satellite imagery shows empty land where homes should be. No official records, no census data. It's like the place was written out of history. Another part references people who reappeared after an event like this. But they weren't the same. Family members refused to acknowledge them. Some were institutionalized, claiming they had memories of a world that didn't exist anymore. One even described hearing a voice through a radio, trying to warn them. And then, at the bottom of one page, a heavily censored line. Final containment protocol initiated. Full erasure recommended. Containment. Erasure. If this has happened before, if someone has been watching, covering it up, then the real question isn't what's happening now. It's what happens next. There's one phrase that keeps appearing in the document, scrawled in the margins, hidden in footnotes, buried in transcripts. Always the same words. This is not the first time. This is not the last. It shows up in reports from 1897, again in 1953, then 1981, not as an official statement, not as part of any government explanation, just there, like a whisper from someone who knew too much. Who wrote it? A survivor? A researcher who couldn't let the truth die? Someone who tried to warn the next generation before it was too late? Or something else? Because the more I stare at those words, the more I feel like I've seen them before. Heard them, maybe. Somewhere in the static. Somewhere in the pauses between transmissions. And that's what terrifies me most. Because if this isn't the first time, then what's stopping it from happening again? The transmission was hijacked. Not cut, not interrupted, taken. It started as a faint hum beneath my voice, a frequency I couldn't quite place. Then it grew, layering over the broadcast, until my words were swallowed by something else. A voice. It wasn't human. Not robotic either, something in between. A distorted, fractured whisper, like words being dragged through broken speakers. This is not the first time. This is not the last. I don't know if it was a warning or a statement of fact. The words repeated, cycling over and over, layering on top of each other, until they weren't words anymore, just sound, then static, and for a full minute, I couldn't tell if I was still on the air. I don't know where the voice came from. It wasn't a call, wasn't from another station. It forced itself in. And now I keep thinking, was it speaking to me? Or was I just caught in the crossfire? If someone, something, wanted to be heard that badly, then I have to ask, what happens when it decides to say more? I don't know who I'm speaking to anymore. I keep asking for calls, for confirmations that someone, anyone, is still listening. And maybe they are. Maybe they've been responding this whole time. But the phone lines are dead. The emails aren't coming in. And the signal feels thinner somehow, like it's being stretched too far. What if I've been speaking into nothing? What if this broadcast has been playing to an empty world? Or worse, what if I've been speaking to something that isn't human at all? The more I think about it, the more I realize I can't remember when I last heard a real voice, not a distorted whisper, not an echo from a missing person, a real living, breathing person. What if I was never broadcasting to them? What if I was broadcasting to it? Or what if it's been broadcasting through me? The signal is breaking apart. I've spent my entire career in radio. I know what interference sounds like. I know when a station is fading. This isn't that. This is different. One moment, I hear my own voice. The next, it's warped, slowed down, then speeding up, sentences overlapping themselves, repeating words I haven't said yet. And then, in between the breaks, I hear other voices, familiar ones, people who called in earlier tonight, people who said they were afraid, that they were losing time, losing reality. But here's the thing, some of them are voices I never heard at all. They're trapped inside the frequency, buried beneath the static, speaking, pleading, caught in some kind of loop. Maybe they aren't gone. Maybe they've just been pulled into the signal itself. And if that's true, what's stopping it from pulling me in too? For the first time all night, there's nothing. No static, no whispers, no distortion, just silence. I didn't think I'd miss the noise. The hum of the radio, the crackle of interference, the distant voices calling in. But this is worse. Because silence isn't just an absence of sound, it's a presence of something else. I keep waiting for the signal to return, for the broadcast to snap back into place. But the longer this goes on, the more I feel like it never will. What if I was never supposed to hear the truth? What if I was never supposed to speak at all? And what if, after all this time, it's finally listening back? The silence had stretched too long. I had started to believe the broadcast was dead, that I was speaking into nothing. And then, finally, a call. At first, I thought the line was empty, just faint breathing, hesitation. Then a voice, shaking, barely above a whisper. There's still a place. It was a woman, but her voice was weak, like she'd been running for hours, or like she hadn't spoken in days. She said she had found somewhere untouched. No disappearances, no distortions, no warping of time. A place where the world still made sense. I pressed for details, but she hesitated. She said it wasn't safe to talk for long. They listen. She whispered. They always listen. I could hear the fear in her voice, the urgency, the certainty that she wasn't alone. She said she'd been moving for days, staying ahead of something. Something she wouldn't name. Then, just before the static swallowed her words, she said one last thing. It's real, but getting there is the hard part. And then she was gone. But if what she said is true, then maybe we still have a chance. The call didn't disconnect completely. The signal was weak, fading in and out, but her voice came back, frantic, pushing through the interference. She said the town isn't on any map. It shouldn't exist, but it does. The clocks still work. The sun still rises and sets at the right time. The people haven't vanished. They haven't even noticed that the world outside is breaking apart. She called it a pocket of reality, untouched by whatever is happening. I asked where. Coordinates, landmarks, anything. But she just repeated the same phrase. You don't find it, it finds you. She swore that when she first arrived, she hadn't meant to. She had been running, desperate, lost, and then suddenly she was there, like she had been pulled in. I asked if she had tried leaving. The pause was too long. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. I don't think we're supposed to leave. The signal crackled, and then quieter. I don't think we can. Her voice was breaking apart, distortion creeping into her words. She said she didn't have much time left, that they were close. I asked who was chasing her. You already know, she said. I wanted to deny it, but the truth had been there all along. The shadows, the missing time, the feeling that something is always just out of sight. We've been watching them, but they've been watching us too. If you want to survive, you have to find it first, she whispered. Before they find you. The line cut out. No static, no dead tone, just emptiness. And now, for the first time since this started, I'm afraid to speak. Because if she was right, they might already be listening. I've spent this entire broadcast telling you to stay inside, to be careful, to wait for answers. But now I was wrong. Whatever is happening, whatever is out there, we can't just sit and wait for it to pass. It's not going away. It's closing in. If you can hear this, you have to move. Get out of your house. Get in your car. Find someone, anyone. Don't be alone, because that's what they want. I know what you're thinking. Where do we go? I don't have an answer, but someone out there does. That woman, the caller, she found a place, a town where things are still normal. She said it's real. She said it's safe. If she got there, then maybe we can too. Maybe there's still a way out. I don't know how much longer I can keep this signal going. I don't know how much longer I have. But if you're listening, go. Now find the road that isn't supposed to be there, the one that only shows up when you need it most. Because if you wait too long, they'll find you first. Something is wrong. The lights just dimmed. The monitors are glitching, flickering, like something is pressing against the signal. For a moment, my voice warped, stretched, distorted, like an echo that isn't mine. The words came back to me a second after I spoke them, but not quite the same. I don't know if this is interference or if something else is trying to speak through me. The equipment is failing, the transmission is unstable, but that doesn't make sense. I've been through storms, power failures, all of it. This shouldn't be happening. I keep feeling like there's something just behind me, just out of sight. Like if I turn around too fast, I'll see it. I need to keep talking. I need to keep the signal alive. But if you can still hear this, if you're still out there, tell me I'm not speaking into nothing. Tell me I'm not alone. I don't remember how I got here. I've been broadcasting all night, right? Reading reports, taking calls. That's what I've been doing. That's what I've always done. But then I tried to think back to this morning, to yesterday, and it's gone. The drive to the station, unlocking the door, sitting down in this chair. I don't remember any of it. I checked my phone, but the call logs are empty. No messages, no missed calls. It's like no one has tried to reach me at all. And then I looked at my notes, at my own handwriting on the page in front of me. Except, that's not my handwriting. I don't know whose it is, but the words are familiar. Because I've been saying them all night, the same phrases over and over. Like I've done this before. Like I'm repeating something that's already happened. I just heard something. Not outside, not in the station. From the radio, it was my voice. But it wasn't. It was off. A fraction of a second behind me. an echo, a delay, and then it started saying things I hadn't said yet. I listened, frozen, as my own voice whispered a message back to me. You're almost out of time. And then silence. I don't know what's happening anymore. I don't know if I'm still broadcasting or if I'm just sitting here speaking into something that has already moved on. But if you're still listening, if you can hear me, then please tell me my voice still belongs to me. Because right now, I'm not so sure. I don't know what to do. I could keep talking, keep filling this space with words. Maybe someone somewhere is still listening. Maybe I'm not alone. Or maybe I should leave. Maybe I should go. Try to find the town, the road, the people who still exist. Maybe I've been sitting here too long, locked inside this signal, while the rest of the world disappears. I keep thinking about that last call. You have to find it before they find you. But what if it's already too late? What if I was never meant to make it out? The walls of this station feel smaller now, pressing in. The microphone in front of me feels like an anchor, keeping me here. My voice feels like the only thing left tethering me to reality. If I leave, what happens? If I stop speaking, does this all stop existing? Or worse, was this never real at all? I have to decide. I have to do something. But the longer I sit here, the more I wonder, was the choice ever mine to make? I just heard it again. It was faint at first, barely noticeable. A small delay. A whisper beneath my words. But then it grew louder, clearer. Too perfect to be an echo. It was me, repeating everything I just said, but wrong, stretched, distorted. Office! I tried to stop talking, to cut off the words before they could be repeated, but it didn't matter. The voice kept going. It kept speaking, even after I went silent. And then it started saying things I hadn't said yet. I sat here, frozen, listening to my own voice, predict my next sentence before I spoke it. A script I was following without knowing. I feel sick. Because if my words are being repeated before I even say them, then am I still the one speaking? I don't know how long I've been sitting here. Time isn't working right. I just caught myself saying something I don't remember thinking, a sentence that slipped past my lips like it had always been there. If you're listening to this, you've already forgotten once. I don't know where it came from. I don't know why I said it, but my hands are shaking and my head is pounding because it felt familiar, like I've said it before, like I've been saying it over and over, trapped in the loop. I can't remember starting. I flipped back through my notes I don't remember writing, the phrases there, scrawled in the margins, over and over, in handwriting that barely looks like mine. I feel like I'm slipping. Like I've already lost something I'll never get back. And if that's true, how many times have I been here before? The broadcast just broke itself apart. I didn't touch anything. I didn't change the settings. But the transmission, it split. Voices from earlier in the night started playing out of order. My own words overlapping, looping back on themselves. Reports I know I read hours ago repeating as if they were new. And then, buried underneath it all, something worse. A voice I don't recognize. Not a caller, not me. Something deeper. It was speaking, but the words didn't match. It was narrating something else. Another version of this night. A version where I said different things, made different choices, ended up somewhere I don't remember being. And then, for just a second, I heard myself beg. Not the version of me sitting here now. Another me. A past me. Or maybe a future one. Everything is gone. No static, no distortion, no overlapping voices, just dead air. I don't know when the signal cut out. I don't know if it was sudden, or if it faded so slowly I didn't notice. But the station is silent. The world is silent. I keep speaking, but nothing comes out. Or maybe something does. I just can't hear it anymore. Maybe I've already disappeared. Maybe I was never really here at all. Maybe this has all happened before and I just forgot. Or maybe this was never a warning. Maybe this was just a record of how it always ends. As we wrap up today's broadcast, I want to leave you with this thought. Despite the darkness we face, despite everything we've lost, there's still hope. We're still here. And as long as we keep moving forward, keep building, keep remembering each other, we're not truly lost. No matter what the world looks like around us, there's always something worth fighting for, always something worth remembering. So let's keep going, together. Even when things feel uncertain, remember, you're not alone. We're all in this together. We might not have the past, but we have today. And that's enough to make tomorrow worth living for. Thank you for joining me today. If you've enjoyed this broadcast, if it helped you feel connected, or maybe just a little less alone, please do me a favor. Like this video, share it with others, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support means everything to us, and if you want to hear more of these daily broadcasts, you can also support us by clicking the join button on our channel. Every bit of your support helps us keep going, keep sharing, and keep telling the stories that matter. Until next time, keep safe, keep strong, and remember, even in the silence, we are still here, you're still here, and that's all we need to keep moving forward. See you soon.